Vanessa, it's good to see you again. Thanks for coming back on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited because we're actually recording this in person, which is rare and fun.
Oh,
We're sitting
fun.
in New Orleans at the National Charter Schools Conference, and I was looking back, and it's been almost 18 months since you first came on the podcast.
Mhm.
And so I thought it'd be great to sit down with you and talk about what's going on in the enrollment space. So, why don't we start with just at the highest level as you think back over the last year or so and how you're supporting your clients? What's changed in the market?
Yes, well, I mean, there's still a lot that's the same, right? The enrollment environment continues to be really challenging for schools as, competition increases and the demographic, decline continues, but it's good for parents. There's a lot of choices for them. I think one of the biggest things that's changed in the last several months is just the growth of AI and how that's impacting the parent experience for sure. Also, just in several different states, there's various laws that have changed that are impacting access to different types of schools. But I would say universally across the board, the biggest thing that's changed is how AI is impacting the parent school search process and how we're on the marketing side having to really adapt to that and navigate that with our partners and for ourselves as we support schools with this.
Okay, perfect. So, I want to dig into AI because I think this is a hot topic on everyone's mind. And I think enrollment and enrollment marketing is actually one of the most, practical places for AI in the K-12 space right now. And so why don't we start with, you mentioned it's really changing how parents and families are finding schools
Mhm.
potentially or doing their research. Tell us a little bit more about that. Practically, what does that mean? Are they going to a chat bot to
Yeah.
try and look up schools? Is it AI responses that Google's generating at the top of the search,
Mhm.
queue instead of the 10 blue links. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both of those things, but, practically, now 1 out of 4 parents are going to a chatbot or one out of 4 consumers are going to a chatbot before they go to Google for any search, and we have to believe that that applies to school search as well. And so when families are doing that and they're saying, "Tell me what schools are close by," and they're talking to Claude or they're talking to ChatGPT, it's populating information based off of website queries. It's very different than the Google experience where we would be able to pay for a certain placement on that or kind of control a little bit more about what would populate in that search. So that is a real key difference. And now Google has made significant changes in the last several really weeks where even if you are a Google user first, they now have AI generating responses at the very top. So those that are using SEO as a primary tactic for search or paid search SEO, their PPC click links and stuff, they're showing up further behind
Right.
or
You
further
might you
below
might be
too.
number
So
5
you might
on the
be
list, but
right
it
because
doesn't even
that
matter because someone's not looking
that
at it.
Google generated response
Yeah.
is gonna come that AI generated response is gonna come up at the top, and so it's certainly, like, changing how schools need to prepare for an environment that's not as SEO forward, but a term that's called AEO, which is agent engine optimization, because those engines are looking for something different than what SEO, search engine optimization, used to look for.
Can you give us an example of that? Because I think, you and your team are in the weeds on this
Yeah,
every day. For your average person like
yeah,
myself who's not in, you know, SEO versus
yeah,
AEO, give us like a really practical example of what are agents looking for,
yeah.
in our school materials.
So they're looking for, I would say the best thing a school can do is add an FAQ. Schools are looking, I mean, the agents are looking for like blocks of content that they can carry over into a more of a narrative type response. Whereas with SEO, we were putting in keywords and hoping to find a match that's like, oh, bingo, this person searched this. We have that keyword there. We're going to give this to them and they can kind of choose their adventure and find us. So this is different. What is now happening is the agents are crawling websites looking for more complete answers than how Google had worked in the past. And so a very practical example, and I did this just a second ago, is I asked one of the agents, when is the first day of school at my son's school? Well, they told me the first day of school last year because that was
They
on
found the
they found
calendar or
last year's
whatever, yeah.
calendar, and so they are pulling that information from a post that they did about that in the past, and so, like, having complete up-to-date information in FAQ form or just on your website, period, that's what they're indexing. So
Interesting.
that's a difference.
So it's really moving from, okay, maybe we're a STEM school and in our blog posts,
Yep.
we make sure we say STEM schools in Houston or whatever a
Yes.
lot of times to like, what is a STEM
Yes.
school? How does the programming different, and making sure you've got all the details that a parent might be looking for
And I
answers to.
and I also think that the agents do a good job of prompting parents to ask the question that's next, whereas Google didn't do that. So, Google, you say, when is the first day of school? Maybe it pops up with a link to an academic calendar, and that's the end of that search.
Right.
Where now you type that into a bot and it says, I can only pull up last year's first day of school. Um, are there other schools that I can look up for you? Or does this answer everything that you want to know about this? If we were to go down a different path with a chat and say, I'm thinking about these two schools, it's going to pull a lot of different information, that's more narrative form and probably ask me three more questions that I may not have been thinking about as a consumer when I started that, chat
Right.
journey, which is very, very different and helpful for parents and also more work
Yeah.
that schools need to start
It's
doing
making
to
them
make
better
sure it's
consumers.
making
Yeah.
us better consumers and
Yeah.
parents are going to be more informed shoppers, but also schools need to make sure that their competitive presence in
Right.
this environment is that you're showing up in it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the things, whenever there's a shift in the market, there's this draw to swing the pendulum the other
Yes.
direction and be like, well, all of a sudden our website doesn't matter. And
Yes.
we need to have this really long listicle of,
Yes.
FAQs or whatever because everyone's going to agents. Where do you feel like is that shift happening as quickly as it sometimes gets talked about, in the headlines? Or do you feel like this is more of the things are moving quickly, but like you still need to have a great website. You still need to
Yes.
focus on social proof. Like, are the fundamentals still the same and it's more tweaking, various aspects of the family experience? What do you think?
Yes. I mean, it's 1 out of 4 consumers are using a chat before Google, but that means 3 out of 4 are still using, like, Google,
Right.
like, traditionally, right? So, like, we've gotta make sure that our schools are prepared for all consumers who are finding them in various different
Mm,
ways, and, I mean, there's a lot that aren't even, like, finding us digitally, but I would say to your question more specifically, like, the fundamentals remain the same. You need to have a good website. Having a good website, what does that mean now? It might mean a few different things.
mm,
So, you might have in the past had a blog and then that kind of went away because you weren't keeping it updated, like, it might be time to bring that back because that's the type of content that agents really like. Maybe you had an FAQ 5 years ago that you haven't revisited in a while. It would be important for you to revisit that
right.
because FAQs are something that agents really like. So it's not necessarily that the fundamentals need to be too different, but it's like how you're maximizing that, like, specific channel. Google My Business, for example, like, most of us have a basic profile for Google My Business that has your location and it has a phone number. A lot of schools don't revisit that and keep it fresh with content because there's a lot of information you can actually put on there. So, like, revisiting some of those things to make sure that it has enough information to pull into a query should it come to that. So it's not maybe different, but it's there's like a maybe a double click, if you will,
Yeah.
into making sure that it's checking some of these boxes.
Right. Okay. So let's shift to the application experience a little bit because we've been talking about how are consumers doing research, what's shifted there in the landscape. Um, as far as the actual application experience goes, are you finding that as families become better consumers, they're powered by AI research? Are they applying to more schools? Is it changing the way the application process needs to be personalized? I
Mhm.
think a lot of people are feeling the pressure that I need to incorporate AI in like every aspect
Yes.
of what we're doing. How
Yeah.
do I do that? And does it change our application process or should we, this is really we can focus at the high level for now and still do what we're doing in terms of our application funnel?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there are aspects if you think about the application journey, right? A family needs to know about a school, then they apply to that school. I don't think anything really needs to change that's AI powered about the actual application as long as it's easy for families to fill out and that they are, there aren't a lot of barriers to that experience. But I do think like getting a family to that point, it may be a queer like a search or a chat with an agent, or it could be that they're like seeing you on social media or they're interacting with content that you've produced on whether it be like, TikTok or something along those lines. I do think parents are becoming savvier about identifying what's AI and what's not in those instances. And so I think on their road to an application, the schools need to be cognizant of the balance of how they're leveraging AI because there is a bit of a reaction when you're swinging the pendulum too far
Mm,
and you're over indexing on AI to create your graphics and write your content.
right.
Folks can
The kids
identify
are
that from
smiling a little
yeah,
too
those kids are those
cleanly. Yeah.
smiles are too there's nothing on the desks behind you, right? Like
Right, right,
parents can identify that and the language has also become very identifiable, right?
right,
I can tell anytime somebody posted something from AI on LinkedIn,
right.
parents are savvy consumers and they can see that too. So I'd say like schools should still continue to like use it for efficiency, sure, but try to personalize their content that's getting a school to like opt into them as a choice. And then you also asked about like are parents choosing more schools now? I don't have any recent data, but there was a study done by Niche maybe a year ago that showed that parents are, it was like 25% of families are applying to up to five schools.
Wow.
I would hope that with better research tools that that number would go down.
Right,
I
right. Can
I would
actually
hope and
narrow the
think
options
I can
potentially.
narrow down,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly my choices, but they've not done their study or I haven't seen it yet. Maybe
yeah.
there is a new one. But yes, but it's a good number of families that are applying to more than one school still in a lot of markets, and so we haven't seen that shift yet.
Okay, interesting. What about and this is, we can nerd out about this or we can cut this out, but what
Yeah.
about, what about using AI for understanding your enrollment and marketing data? So whether it's like number of
Yeah.
applications or, website analytics, 'cause I think one of the, common challenges you hear is like, "Well, I'm the COO and I'm responsible for enrollment,
Mhm.
but I'm not a marketer by trade per
Yep.
se." Some of them are, others not,
Mhm.
and I'm also dealing with food service and technology. Like, I don't have the time to be in the
Mhm.
weeds. Do you feel like AI provides an opportunity to do, like, really advanced analytics on your enrollment funnel performance and, like, predict better? Because I think the finance teams are very interested in how do we
Mhm.
predict the, enrollment because
Yeah.
it's our revenue. What are you seeing there? Are any schools kind of on the leading edge of using these
Mhm.
tools for kind of forecasting?
Yes, and there definitely are a lot of schools that are being savvy about how they're leveraging AI for all of that. Like starting from the very beginning, right? The applicant process, funnel melt is a term that we use quite a bit, right? How many people are going from being interested in you, perhaps they're a lead, to actually filling out the application? How many people, once they fill out the application, are saying yes? All of those different conversion points. There's drop off there as well, and AI can be a wonderful tool to help you understand your melt rate and what you can do to solve for that because going from lead to application the if your conversion rate is under benchmark which for us is at least a 20% conversion rate then there's things that you can do differently application to yes if you're under benchmark there as well there's different types of things that you can do, right? And so AI can help you identify where's the biggest drop off for you in a meaningful way. Do not I would not recommend that you put student data into AI.
Right, right, right.
Try to only use student IDs or something that's not identifiable, of course. Be very careful, especially if you do not have a paid account. But yes, it can be very helpful in that way. And it also can help you measure the efficiency of the strategies that you're using. So, a lot of us are using marketing as a tool to attract families. And you might be saying, or your CFO might be saying things like, well, we're marketing. It's like, well, what are we doing? And is it working? And
Mhm.
is it the right strategy? And AI can be really a really helpful thought partner in helping you determine what pivots you might want to make. Like if you're scale of an ad isn't reaching enough people, it might recommend that you either add money or add geography to it, right? It can be very prescriptive in that way that, especially if you have a lean team or you don't have a marketer on your team, it can help, you
Mhm.
know, it can help bridge that gap for you a bit.
So let's talk about some tangible things someone
Okay.
listening to this can do. So
Yeah.
let's say, my school, we've got 3 campuses, we're growing,
Yep.
but, the enrollment landscape has gotten a little more
Hmm.
competitive. We historically have had, what we feel like is a good digital
Hmm.
experience, but we feel like we're not necessarily taking advantage of, what AI is introducing into the market. What would be some basic things for us to take a step back and say, "Okay, how can we look at what we're doing today, and how can we start to incorporate AI?" Where would recommend a school get started? What are some basic things they can do to say, are we over indexed on SEO versus, and
Yep.
under indexed on AEO, whatever it might be. What would be the first couple things you'd recommend?
I think the first place to start, we have a term on our team that we call the PPX, the prospective parent experience.
Okay.
This is not a real term, but we're pretty committed to
You
making
need
it
it,
happen.
yeah, you can
I know we
TM
need,
that,
yeah,
yeah.
hashtag PPX. And Our hashtag's even cool anymore. I don't think so. But one of the things that we talk about a lot is like, what's the prospective parent experience? So I think what you could do as a school, anyone can go into Claude or ChatGPT and type in like, please evaluate the application enrollment process for my school,
Mm,
and it will tell you.
it's probably a little scary.
It is scary. No, totally, it's
Please
scary.
roast our
Yeah,
our
roast right,
PPX.
roast us, but it'll tell you, like, for example, we did this for a group of schools that we provide training for, and it gave us things that the experience was doing well, and then it also said, "Here are some recommendations. You have inconsistent grades on your homepage and a back page." That happens a lot as schools grow. They forget
They're
where
updating
all of
the
the content lives on their website, but that creates confusion for parents. If they're like, "Wait, are they K-3 or are they K-2?"
right.
And if they think that they're only K-2, then they're like, "Oh, well, I have a 3rd grader, I'm not gonna apply," and it was just like a update. It identified what pages might have led to dead links, which
Wow.
again, as schools grow and things happen, they don't always have the maintenance capability. It talked about some of the calls to action. Schools have a tendency to over-index on enroll now, and enroll really is the final stage, and depending on the time of year, you want families to feel like there's a commitment, but not a binding commitment.
Yeah, we're
Like,
not getting
I'm
married
exploring. We're not
by
getting
God,
married. Like, we're
we learn a little
dating,
more.
but, like,
Yeah,
I'm exploring what all of my options are, so it provides recommendations like that, and it'll describe, like, where there might be friction in the process. So that's the first thing I would just for a takeaway prompt would be, please evaluate the applicant experience for a family who may wanna enroll their student. Be
okay.
specific about that because it might evaluate the staff
Yep,
application process,
okay.
which is also important.
We'll put a prompt you can copy and paste in the show
Exactly,
notes of this
yes.
episode.
So that's the first thing. I would say beyond that, as a school might be considering growing or they're facing headwinds, um, AI can be very helpful in, helping you analyze your competitor set.
Mm,
What are schools A, B, and C saying about their program? What's similar or different about my program to help you identify some differentiators? And even further behind, like just understanding the landscape, how many schools are around me, how many students are around here. It'll pull, census data, publicly available information, but it can be very helpful to give you like the lay of the land. Um, and the responses are only as good as the sources. And so you've really got to be savvy about not taking the first answer it gives you as like, oh, this is the answer. Really just double check what the links are,
mm,
that it's coming from, and make sure it's not just some, personal blog that somebody's on like
right.
on a vendetta writing something. Like you've got to make sure it's coming from a reputable source, just like anything. But it can be very helpful pretty efficiently.
Really good practical tips here. Um, what do you feel like, I wanna go inverse
Yeah.
of positive things to be doing? Anything you would say, "This is a waste of time," or maybe avoid doing this, or this is kind of like an overpromise of
Hmm.
the AI and you're not seeing it really move the needle? Because I think as much as it's valuable to know we should be doing these things,
Hmm.
in marketing, sometimes it's also equally as valuable to say we need to stop
Yep.
doing these other things because it's a waste of time, energy, and effort.
I think the very easy to produce, obviously AI graphics
Yeah.
have got to stop. The there's a certain, ChatGPT produces these flyers that have like watercolor and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it is just very obvious to the parent that that was produced that way, and it really can be a detractor for certain parents because it doesn't feel like it's personalized or it's from that school. Messaging as well, like making sure that there's a balance of personalization that you are bringing and you're being true to your brand. Say it's tough for schools with photography. They don't always have the best options, but some of that stock photography is also it's also rough. I'd recommend you do that very, very limited
We've all
use.
seen that one kid
Yes,
in the green
yes,
shirt. Yeah.
exactly. He goes to so many
Yeah.
schools,
Yeah.
so I would say those are a few things to try to stay away from if you can. I know there are some more sophisticated design tools that are better but our enrollment teams are lean. They
Yeah.
don't have the time to be tinkering with 12 different tools to figure out what's going to be the best one and give them the best looking design or this. And so I understand the need for some of that convenience, but it does impact the perspective of like the parent perspective and that they are like, oh, that looks just like the one around the corner. And you want to make sure that you feel distinct and unique. So those are a couple of things that come to mind for sure.
Love it. Um, you mentioned lean teams.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the capabilities AI is introducing allow for, single person or very, very small enrollment teams to do enrollment at scale? Or do you think that is still a couple years down the road? Just future looking. I know you don't have a crystal ball.
A crystal ball. I'm also not like I don't have a black belt in AI or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like
I
none of
don't think
us
anybody
do.
does.
It's
Yeah.
changing so much. I do think if you are a early adopter and you're willing to go build agents that are gonna, essentially lead parts of the enrollment funnel,
Mhm.
I mean, it is possible that it can really help maximize that FTE of one or that team of one. I don't see that happening right now in schools. Our teams are pretty lean and they don't often have the time because they're lean to develop
Yeah. Comprehensive,
comprehensive
AI driven.
yeah, AI team, like AI teams, agent teams. So I think that it's certainly helping, right? Like it can help write mass comms for a person who may have spent hours doing that before. But there just is a degree of this process that is personal. Nothing is more personal to a parent than choosing where their child is going to go to school.
Right.
I mean, in some instances, it's a 13-year decision that you're making when your baby is 4 or 5. And the human component of that is so critical that while the power and efficiency of AI is a wonderful thing, we shouldn't let it remove that like relationship aspect of like choosing a school. So I would encourage schools to like not over rely on that for the nurture aspect of things because it's such a decision for a family that's so meaningful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We just did a school tour a couple months ago for my oldest son, and, it was such a reminder that, man, there's nothing like sitting there, walking into a
Yep.
classroom, meeting the teacher,
Yep.
shaking their hand,
Hmm.
seeing the other students, sitting on the floor, whatever it is. So, yeah, I think that's a healthy reminder at the
Yeah.
end of a conversation about AI. It's
Yes.
not it's the robots will not run
Yeah.
everything.
And hey, the follow-up emails from the robots are great,
Yeah,
right? Like,
right.
reminding you of all the great
Yeah,
things that you saw in person, but there's gotta be a balance for sure, that helps achieve that. In fact, tours are now becoming, like, the new lead gen in a lot of ways. Like, families, I think, are craving this in-person aspect to the enrollment process as they used to. It kinda went away for a little bit. Now,
it's coming back.
more and more schools are finding success in, like, that school tour, that event
Mm.
experience. So we're doing a ton of marketing that's promoting folks, like, attend that versus just, like, kind of giving us our contact information, which has been a cool learning this year.
Uh,
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I always learn a lot when I talk to you,
Aw,
Vanessa, so thank you
thanks.
so much for
Yes.
sharing your expertise. Where can people learn more about your work? Any other tools or resources you would recommend for listeners that we can link to in the show notes?
Yes, so we have an AEO scorecard that we can put
Okay,
in the and in the show notes. It helps give schools just like these are the 10 things you should be thinking about.
sweet.
So I'll send that to you. And then yeah, they can learn about us on our website. And like I said last time, this makes me sad that I've not made much progress on this in 18 months. They can follow me online, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot there. But
You
yes.
haven't let your agent take
I
over your
haven't let my
profile just yet?
I know, but that's maybe my next step out of this.
Yeah. You're going for
But
the
yeah,
more authentic version of
exactly.
yeah,
Find me in room 208 at the conference.
that's
You'll find
right.
me in person. I'm
That's
going for
right.
the personalization of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, well, that's a wrap. Thanks
Awesome.
again, Vanessa.
Thanks. Great to see you.
Thanks for listening to Charter School Insider. This show is brought to you by BuyQ, the group purchasing organization specifically for charter schools. Want to learn how to maximize your school's purchasing power? Join together with thousands of other charter schools by visiting buyq.org/sign-up. BuyQ's purchasing program is free and has no obligations or commitments required. If you enjoyed today's episode, do us a favor and subscribe on your podcast listening platform of choice. If you have a question or feedback for us, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at podcast@byq.org. Thanks, and we hope you'll tune in for the next one.